the House of Nightmares. The moon hung low and fat in the ink-black Halloween night sky, casting eerie shadows across the dimly lit suburban streets. 5 children, dressed as ghouls, witches, and superheroes, scurried along the sidewalk, their laughter punctuated by excited squeals. It was Halloween, and the promise of candy had transformed their quaint neighborhood into a wonderland of spooky delights. At the forefront of the little group was Timmy, a fearless 11-year-old in a vampire costume, who led the way, his plastic fangs clacking with every step. Behind him was his younger sister, Sarah, dressed as a mummy, her candy bag gripped tightly in her tiny bandage-wrapped hand. Then came Max, a brave knight with a makeshift cardboard sword, and his 2 friends, Lily and Brian, a witch and a ninja, respectively. Their pumpkin-shaped buckets rattled with the weight of sweets as they ventured deeper into the Halloween night. The air was crisp, and the leaves beneath their feet crunched like autumn's own fireworks display. As the children strolled past one house after another, they couldn't help but marvel at the elaborate decorations. Fake cobwebs clung to bushes, grinning jack-o'-lanterns glowed with malevolent light, and skeletal hands emerged from the ground, reaching for unsuspecting trick-or-treaters. Suddenly, Timmy pointed at a house adorned with an overwhelming array of decorations. A giant spider spun its web across the front porch, and eerie music wafted from hidden speakers. It was as if the very embodiment of Halloween itself had taken root in that home. With a shared excitement, the children raced to the front door, eager for their Halloween treasure. The lady who answered the door was a vision of sweetness and innocence, her silver hair cascading in waves, a smile that could warm the coldest of hearts, and a soft voice that promised kindness. She wore a simple grandmotherly dress, and her cheeks were rosy as if she had just finished baking cookies. "Trick or treat," the children chorused, extending their buckets for candy. Oh, what lovely costumes. The lady's eyes sparkled as she filled each child's bag with an assortment of treats, from chocolate bars to lollipops. "Thank you," Max said with a grin, his armor-clad chest puffing out with pride. "You're welcome, dearies. Would you like to come inside for a moment?" Her smile widened, revealing a row of perfectly white teeth. The children exchanged glances, their excitement warring with caution. Timmy, the leader of the group, was usually more cautious than the others. However, the lady's welcoming demeanor seemed to disarm even his suspicions. "I suppose it wouldn't hurt," Timmy said, giving a shrug. The others nodded in agreement. As they stepped over the threshold, they couldn't help but gasp in amazement. The inside of the house was even more enchanting than the outside. It was as if they had walked into a different world altogether. The walls were adorned with paintings of fairy tale forests, and a warm fire crackled in the hearth. The lady led them into the kitchen, where plates of homemade cookies and candy awaited. The children's eyes widened at the sight. "Please help yourselves," she encouraged them. Sarah reached for a chocolate chip cookie, her eyes twinkling with delight. Max, never one to resist sweets, grabbed a handful of candies. The others did the same, their initial reservations melting away. But something about the house niggled at Timmy's mind as he reached for a cookie. He noticed a strange odor, something that didn't belong in this idyllic house. It was a faint, metallic tang that made his stomach churn. He glanced around the kitchen, searching for the source of the unsettling scent. That's when he saw it. In the corner of the room, partially hidden behind a faded curtain, was a door. A heavy wooden door, bound with iron, that led to a dark, mysterious basement. The lady noticed Timmy's unease and followed his gaze. "Oh, that's just the cellar, dear. Nothing to be afraid of. Just an old part of the house." Timmy nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The rest of the children, engrossed in their treats, seemed oblivious to his unease. "Would you like to see my garden?" the lady asked. The children readily agreed, hoping to find a garden filled with more sweets and surprises. As they followed her through the house, they couldn't help but admire the antique furniture, ornate decorations, and the array of curious trinkets that adorned the shelves. When they reached the back door, the lady led them through a narrow corridor and into a dark, sprawling garden. The moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy of ancient trees that loomed over the garden. The children's excitement waned as they took in the desolate, overgrown landscape. "This garden used to be so beautiful," the lady lamented, her voice tinged with sadness. In the center of the garden, the children noticed a peculiar structure. It was an old, ornate gazebo, its ironwork covered in vines and moss. The lady beckoned them closer. The children approached cautiously, their steps hesitant. As they drew nearer, they could see something strange inside the gazebo. An eerie, soft glow emanated from within, and strange, otherworldly symbols were etched into the ground. Timmy's heart raced as he realized that the symbols were not part of any Halloween decorations. "What is this?" Timmy asked, his voice quivering. The lady turned to him, her eyes now cold and distant. "It's a very special place, my dears, a place where I keep my secrets." Suddenly, the lady's sweet facade vanished, and she lunged at the children with unnatural speed. In an instant, she had them in a vice-like grip, her eyes blazing with malevolent intent. The children screamed, their cries echoing through the garden. They struggled to break free, but the lady's strength was astonishing. With a sinister smile, she dragged them toward the gazebo, its eerie glow intensifying. "No!" Timmy shouted, his fear giving way to determination. He remembered the plastic fangs he wore as part of his vampire costume and bit down on the lady's hand with all his might. She howled in pain and released them, stumbling back. The children scrambled to their feet, their costumes torn and dirty. They ran as fast as they could, desperate to escape the clutches of the monstrous lady. As they reached the back door of the house, they heard her screams of frustration and anger behind them. Inside the house, they followed their instincts and rushed to the kitchen. Timmy, now the de facto leader, urged the others to find a way to lock the door. Lily, the witch, spotted a broomstick by the door and used it to wedge the back door shut. It wouldn't hold for long, but it bought them a few precious moments. "Call the police," Timmy urged, handing his phone to Brian, the ninja. The children were terrified and huddled together, their hearts pounding as they waited for help to arrive. Outside, the lady's screams grew more desperate. She pounded on the kitchen door, demanding they come out. But the children held firm, refusing to fall for her tricks again. The minutes felt like long hours, but finally the sound of sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights flashed outside, and the children let out a collective sigh of relief. Officer Jeff Morgan, a burly, no-nonsense cop, burst through the door, his gun drawn. "What's going on here?" he demanded. The children quickly explained the terrifying ordeal they had just experienced. Officer Morgan wasted no time. He called for backup and requested an ambulance for the lady, who was still screaming incoherently in the garden. As the children were led out of the house, they saw a group of officers and paramedics tending to the lady. She was restrained and covered in a white sheet, her eyes wild with madness. In the days that followed, the children's parents showered them with love and affection, grateful that they were safe. The ordeal had left its mark, but they had survived. Officer Morgan, still puzzled by the bizarre events, conducted a thorough investigation of the lady's house and garden. What he discovered in the basement sent shivers down his spine. The walls were covered in claw marks, and dried blood splatters told a horrifying story. In a hidden chamber, he found the remains of several children, their bones intertwined with sinister symbols, their deaths a macabre mystery. The lady, it seemed, had been living a nightmare of her own making, a nightmare that had claimed the lives of innocent children. As the truth came to light, the community was left in shock. The lady's delusions were a twisted tapestry of paranoia, obsession, and a warped sense of motherly love. As investigators delved deeper into her disturbed psyche, they uncovered the chilling truth about her motivations and the dark rituals she believed would protect the children she had lured into her home. It all began with the lady's deeply rooted fear that her own children were in imminent danger. She had lost her 2 young daughters years ago in a tragic accident, and the trauma of that loss had never left her. Her grief had festered over the years, warping her perception of reality. In her deluded mind, the lady believed that her daughters' spirits had never left her. She became convinced that they were constantly in peril, threatened by malevolent forces that sought to harm them. She became obsessed with the idea that her daughters could only be protected by performing a series of dark rituals and sacrifices. The children she lured into her home on Halloween were, in her eyes, reincarnations of her beloved daughters, sent by fate to be reunited with her. She believed that by keeping them in her basement, she could shield them from the dangers that haunted her every thought. To her, these actions were acts of love and protection, not the grotesque acts of a deranged mind. The lady's delusions extended to the garden, where she had constructed the eerie gazebo. She believed that the ancient, otherworldly symbols etched into the ground held the power to ward off the evil forces that had taken her daughters. She had convinced herself that these symbols were a barrier between her new children and the malevolent spirits she feared. Her violent outbursts and sudden mood swings were a result of the internal struggle she constantly faced. She alternated between treating the children with kindness, offering them candy, and a glimpse of the love she wished she could have given her own daughters, and moments of terrifying aggression, as she believed that only through such rituals and sacrifices could her new children be saved. As the truth of her delusions came to light, the community was left in a state of disbelief and sadness. They couldn't fathom the darkness that had taken root in the heart of their once beloved neighbor. The horror of the lady's actions cast a long shadow over the neighborhood, a reminder that even the most idyllic facade could hide the darkest of secrets. In the end, the lady was deemed mentally unfit to stand trial and was committed to a secure psychiatric facility, where she would receive the care and treatment she so desperately needed. The children, though forever scarred by their traumatic experience, found solace in knowing they had escaped the clutches of a woman who had been driven to madness by her own delusions. Halloween would never be the same for the children, but they had faced true terror and survived. Their bond had grown stronger, and the experience had taught them the value of caution and the importance of trust. As the years passed, the memory of that fateful Halloween night faded, but the scars remained, a reminder that sometimes the most monstrous things can wear the sweetest masks.